will now ask the Director of our Medical Director from the University of the West Indies School of Clinical Medicine and Research, Dr. Robin Roberts, to give us a welcome.
In a policy statement, the American Academy of Family Physicians defined medical research as the creation of new knowledge, primarily aimed toward improved patient care and its associated activities. When we translate this to the patient being the population, then medical research is all about advancing the nation's health. Honorable Minister of Health, Dr. Hubert Minnis, PAHO representative, Dr. Merrill Lewis, permanent secretaries, we have Dr. Garraway from Education and Ms. Camille Johnson from Health. Pleased to see our chairman of the board of our president of our alumni, Dr. Julie Sherwood. We're very pleased to have our chairperson of our PHA, Ms. Rita Brown, and our managing director, Mr. Herbert Brown. We're very pleased to have our director of public health here as well. We have our consultant staff and a resident medical staff. We have our nursing officers and our other allied healthcare colleagues and nurses. We have a few members here from the private sector and interested persons, and our medical students. So, in this spirit of creating new knowledge and applying it, on behalf of the University of the West Indies School of Clinical Medicine and Research, the Bahamas, I welcome you to our 4th annual Research Day. In the Faculty of Medicine of the University of the West Indies, we have a very rich tradition of research. We have contributed much new and applied knowledge and advanced the health of the population of those in our region. The list is very impressive, and just to name a few, at the level of bench research, we have the knowledge and management of nutrition, nutritional disorders, malnutrition at the Tropical Metabolism Research Unit in Jamaica. We have at the clinical arm, we have great diseases such as Jamaican neuropathy disease. And then there's sickle cell disease, both in terms of our laboratory research and in terms of the whole clinical history and profile of patients with sickle disease. So it would stand to reason that in the establishment of a medical school in the Bahamas for the development of our national health, advancing our own human resource as our primary reason of being, we should seek to do the same likewise, create our impressive list of research contributions. Hence, in starting out in the Bahamas with a branch of the University of the West Indies Faculty of Medicine in 1997, we soon realized that our mandate was not merely to pass on the traditions of the clinical medical practice of diagnosis and treatment, but to become our center of medical research as well. To this end, we started a research day. It was the prelude to the formal transition from the clinical training program of the University of the West, the clinical training program of UWI Trinidad, to the School of Clinical Medicine and Research, the Bahamas. I would be remiss not to know that last year we employed full-time Dr. Anthony Frankson as our epidemiologist and statistician, and he's been very busy. In fact, last night at 8 o'clock, passing by the university, there he was with Dr. Farquharson, and they were trying to put the final touches of the statistical aspects of his paper on the anatomical variations of varicose veins in the lower limbs of Bahamian adults. That was in addition to all the work he did with several students the day before. I just wondered what it would be like, what that database of Dr. Farquharson would be like 5 to 10 years from now, and would that translate to us designing some new stockings for Bahamians with varicose veins, or a profile of the utility of antithrombotic agents in Bahamian adults with varicose veins. In defining research as the creation of new knowledge, when we look around at the nature of disease in the Bahamas, then one, we have to consider defining our health status. Are we meeting the benchmarks? If not, why not? Or is it like the IQ test? We just have the wrong performance indicators. When we look at the nature of disease and defining healthcare policies, how do we make them? How do we implement them? How do we evaluate their effectiveness? And finally, when we look at the nature of disease and mapping our future in healthcare, how do we define a healthy Bahamian? How is it that in the Bahamas, we have come to accept big and beautiful, big and bold as being beautiful, and the plus stores as the best place to shop? And how so? In complete defiance of all the evidence of obesity and its adverse effect in our health. I believe that my appointment to the office of director of this organization is the coming of age of UWI as a true Bahamian entity. And in the realm of research, it meant that the time has come to research ourselves, to create new knowledge about us, the Bahamians. If we accept the premise that the health of the nation is the wealth of the nation, nothing could be more fundamental than exploring new knowledge about us that improves our health and thus our wealth as Bahamians. So our research day gives us an opportunity to showcase this new knowledge about our Bahamian health. More importantly, it gives us an opportunity to focus on the major issues of healthcare in the Bahamas. And no issue could be more important right now in the Bahamas than the impact of violence and crime in the country, and hence our keynote speakers that we have here today. I would like to send a special welcome to them for coming when we talked more than almost a year ago with them coming. I believe that at the end of the day, we would look at the whole issue of curbing crime to be far beyond just the hanging them high solutions. I would like to believe that research is about having the fundamental knowledge base of our population health profile. Who are we? I hope we just don't say Valley or Saxons. How are we to become? Addressing the evidence for the subculture of crime and violence, and thus how to redesign it, how to create a crime-free society. I entrust that you look forward to the day of acquiring newly created knowledge, appreciating the essence of research, applying it, and noting the dedication and commitment required, and finally, how we all can be healthier and wealthier for it. So I welcome you to this, our 4th annual Research Day, and hope at the end we look forward to next year's new knowledge, and that is what we make today. So I thank you all for coming and welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Roberts, for those remarks. I'm sure we all feel welcome to this 4th annual Research Day. I would like to say we are indeed honored to have the Royal Bank of Canada as our major sponsor of this event. And coming now to give remarks representing the Royal Bank of Canada is Ms. Tanya McCartney.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, government officials, students in particular, good morning. It is a great pleasure for me to be here today at the launch of this 4th annual Research Day by the University of the West Indies Bahamas Clinicals Program. It's a double honor for me representing the Royal Bank of Canada, but also as a member of the board of the Public Hospitals Authority. So I'm honored to be here today. This is a wonderful event for both the Bahamas and the university because it demonstrates a commitment to invest in a medical research program that can only benefit healthcare and delivery throughout the region. RBC Royal Bank of Canada has provided UWI with banking services since the inception of the Bahamas program in 1997. We are pleased to congratulate Dr. Roberts on his appointment as Director of the Clinicals Program here in the Bahamas. And I understand that he is the first Bahamian to hold this post. So congratulations, Doctor. On behalf of RBC, we are certainly proud of you, and we look forward to not only supporting your research program, but also supporting the implementation of the determined solutions. We continue to see the Research Day as an opportunity to invest in our community in a tangible way by supporting an important initiative that will contribute to the well-being of the Bahamian people. RBC has always been strongly supportive of educational and healthcare initiatives that will produce lasting social impact. We commend you on the focus of this year's Research Day, crime and violence in our society, and the social determinants of healthcare. The topics being addressed today are timely and relevant. These are matters of urgency for the Bahamas and throughout the Caribbean. The Minister of Health, Dr. Minnis, has stressed the importance of addressing critical health needs and health risks for the population. And this is important for the whole development of our nation. And Royal Bank, in sponsoring this event, is responding to his call. We at RBC are confident that this partnership between us and the UWI will make a huge contribution to the education and healthcare sectors. UWI has a philosophy of engaging with the communities in which it operates to ensure that its research, teaching, and consulting activities are relevant to the development objectives of the host country. RBC is fully in sync with this philosophy. We are pleased to have been extended the opportunity to partner with the University of the West Indies for a fourth time, and we are committed to supporting you moving forward, and we look forward to your next Research Day in 2011. I can certainly say that I look forward to doing this. Dr. Roberts said to me, I hope Nat doesn't mind that you're making the presentation. Well, I sort of inched my way in because I find the topics to be timely and very interesting. And I enjoy this experience, and I trust that all of you who are participating will also enjoy the experience. So thank you very much, and we hope that this day will be productive and successful. Good morning.
Thank you, Ms. McCartney. Dr. Roberts, I think now we really see how we're going to get funding. We all know that research goes nowhere without funds. So we're so happy to hear that we know where to go. Okay, coming now is someone I would like to introduce who is no stranger to us. He's our Minister of Health, the Honorable Dr. Hubert Minnis. He's going to be bringing us remarks.
Thank you very much. Madam Master of Ceremony, Dr. Robin Roberts, Director of School of Clinical Medicine Research, UWI Bahamas. Mrs. Elma Garvey, our Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Education. Ms. Camille Johnson, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Health. Mrs. Majuri Sherman-Peters, President of UWI Alumni Association and Permanent Secretary of National Security. Dr. Pearl Macmillan, our Director of Public Health. Ms. Vita Brown, our Chairman of Public Hospital Authority. And Mr. Herbert Brown, our Managing Director of Public Hospital Authority. Ms. Merle Lewis, our Public PAHO and WHO Representative. Tanya McCartney, our representative from Royal Bank of Canada, distinguished UWI lecturers, fellow colleague physicians, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I am honored here today to participate once again in this opening ceremony for the 4th Annual Research Day of the UWI School of Medicine and Clinical Research here in the Bahamas. Following the launch of the Clinical Research Unit in 2006 here in the Bahamas, the first Research Day was successfully held in 2007 and attracted speakers renowned for achievements in their special fields of endeavors. This year is no exception. As we welcome to the Bahamas and to this Research Day distinguished UWI lecturers who will join with local counterparts in presentations on social factors that influence the delivery of healthcare. The theme for this year's Research Day is as fitting as it is timely. As we meet at a time when regional economies are grappling with changes that are necessary in their economies due to changes in global economic patterns. These changes will have a direct bearing on our future development. The development of any society is inextricably linked to the quality of the health of its population. In the Caribbean, heads of governments recognize that the wealth of a nation is truly the health of a nation, and articulated this in the Nassau Declaration of 2001. In our region, the impact of climate change accelerates social dislocation, increases poverty, and has acute and long-range effects on our economy. We now have more hurricanes and more national disasters associated with deforestation and saltwater infiltration of our agricultural lands. We are also experiencing more natural phenomena like earthquakes and tornadoes that result in emergency health issues, as well as destruction of our homes. When we add to these personal behaviors and lifestyle choices, such as abuse of alcohol, tobacco, drugs, and risky sexual practices that are a product of our culture, we see that factors other than health systems and the prevalence of clinics and hospitals impact our health systems. Ladies and gentlemen, our governments are challenged to provide good jobs, sufficient nutritious foods, educational opportunities, adequate housing, safe clean water, proper management of waste, and decreased exposure to environmental pollutants. These concerns remain at the forefront of all government's policies and programs, and we seek to find ways to address these issues in order to retain a healthy workforce in the region. While our emphasis in ministries of health is on health systems and structures and health education, we cannot ignore those social determinants that influence our health requirements. The models of health care we can deliver and ultimately the development of our countries. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished lecturers, we can build health facilities, we can provide health systems, but if we do not recognize and mitigate these other determinants of behaviors, we will not, I repeat, we will not be able to improve the health status of our people. The prevalence of chronic non-communicable diseases in our region and the mortality associated therewith bears testament to the need for action to deal with the choices our people make in the area of nutrition. As you listen to the wise counsels here today, let us understand the need for acceptable standards of education, reduction of violence and poverty, and universal access to health services in order for our societies to move forward. Once we accept that health is a component of every ministry, agency, and governmental department, we will be able to narrow the gap in inequities in health and move closer to optimum development of the Bahamas and other countries within our region. As you lay the foundation for improvements in delivery of health care and ultimately optimum national development, I wish you another successful research day. I thank you all very much for coming, and may God bless each and every one of you. Have a beautiful day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. I will now introduce one of our first distinguished speakers. He is Professor Peter Figueroa, and he has many former titles, which really speaks to his leadership in research. He's formerly CMO, Chief of Epidemiology and HIV/AIDS, UWI-MONA, Ministry of Health, Jamaica. He's currently a professor of public health in the Department of Epidemiology and HIV/AIDS. He's also an honorary research fellow at the UWI Tropical Medicine Research Institute. He's formerly scientific secretary of the Caribbean Health Research Council and director of the Epidemiology and Research Training Unit. He is a stellar graduate from the University of the West Indies, both in the undergraduate and postgraduate, obtaining an honors in MBBS and a distinction in the diploma in public health. He was also awarded the PhD from the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. He has represented the government of Jamaica on regional and international health-related agencies and is a member of several international committees and boards and consultants to WHO and PAHO. His publications include over 100 peer-reviewed papers, 3 jointly edited books, and numerous papers and abstracts. I think we can say he's a veteran researcher in our region. Let's welcome Professor Figueroa, who's going to be talking to us on the social determinants of healthcare in the Caribbean, moving forwards or backwards.
Good morning. Honorable Minister, Permanent Secretary, Sponsor, Representative, Robin, dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen, friends. It's a pleasure to be here in the Bahamas, and I'd like to especially thank Robin for inviting me here and our sponsor for ensuring that I did get here. I've been asked to talk about the social determinants of health in the Caribbean, moving forwards or backwards. You can think about that, whether we're moving forwards or backwards while I'm talking, but I decided to leave it out of the title and just say that I will attempt to give a public health perspective. So what I aim to do is to remind us that health of individuals is rooted in their social conditions, and that improving their health includes transforming social conditions. And I want to explore how the Caribbean has achieved good health at low cost and try and identify some lessons. First, just to remind us what we're trying to do in public health. And this is the science and art of promoting health, preventing disease and injury, enhancing the quality of life, and contributing to sustainable human and economic development, all through the organized and sustainable efforts of society. So this is quite a tremendous challenge. But suppose I were to ask you, and think about it, what is the greatest public health challenge that we are facing now? Think about it, and what would you come up with? I would guess that many of you thought of chronic non-communicable disease, violence, which is a theme of this, HIV/AIDS, You can see the list. All of these are tremendous challenges, and we need not argue which is the most important. According to Nutbeam and Wise, in their paper in the Oxford Textbook of Public Health, they feel that the greatest contemporary public health challenge is to ensure that there is action to achieve equity, to eliminate the unjust gaps in life expectancy and health across the lifespan that have proven to be persistent within wealthy and poor nations, and of course, between nations. I don't know how many of you actually thought of that as the greatest challenge, and they may or may not be right. But it's interesting to note that the World Health Organization, from its inception, has been attempting to remove the social inequity in health while promoting health. And we can go back 30 years to the Alma Ata Declaration on Health for All by the year 2000, and the movement that inspired, including in the Caribbean. And in a sense, that waned, and then in the early 1990s, the WHO came with investment for health strategy, and in some way this is reflected in the CARICOM-Nassau Declaration. And then more recently, the WHO Commission on the Social Determinants of Health is again re-raising the question of the need for us to address the serious social inequities in health. And this is a very interesting and impressive report that is worth looking at. You can get it on the web if you do not actually have a copy. And this is just a diagram of the paradigm in relation to the social determinants of health and how we should seek to address it. We are all born with a certain genetic makeup, and the lifestyle that we adopt is extremely important. But in terms of impact on health, the social and community influences are paramount, as well as the living and working conditions. And underlying this are the general socioeconomic, cultural, and environmental conditions. And together, these make up the social determinants of health. But if we were to look a little more closely at the conditions under which we live and work, then we know that food and nutrition is important. There's a saying that whosoever is the father of an illness, the mother is poor nutrition. Water and sanitation, housing, employment, education, all of these factors impact significantly on health, as well as, of course, the health services themselves. So we can bear this in mind as we go through. If we're talking about social inequity between countries, perhaps this is best exemplified by the fact that there's a difference of 30 to 40 years life expectancy between countries. Japan and Sweden, 80 years of life expectancy at birth, compared with a few countries in Africa of about in their 40s to 50 years. And you can see that the Caribbean falls in between. It's remarkable that one Caribbean country, Cuba, has a life expectancy of 78. But if we look at social inequity within countries, a businessman in Scotland lives 28 years longer than an unskilled worker in the same country. A white lawyer in East Baltimore will live 32 years longer than a black youth. And a black youth in the USA is nearly 2 times more likely to die of a cardiovascular condition than a white youth. And a worker is nearly 3 times more likely to die of a cardiovascular condition than a businessman. So these are serious inequities within countries. And I could not find immediate data to show this similar challenge in the Caribbean, but I was able to identify something that's extremely important in relation to the grade, the educational grade that persons attain. And you can see that grade attainment is moving in one direction, and at the very top, you can see over 90% of persons in Finland remain in school right to the end. And in fact, in the OECD countries, I think about 60% of 20-year-olds are actually in tertiary education. Now, the richest 20 in Latin America and Caribbean, you can see 95% achieve complete schooling. But the poorest 20%, it goes right down to 60%. So within Latin America and Caribbean, this was one example, again, of the social inequity that robs a significant proportion of the population of achieving their potential. The WHO Commission on Social Determinants of Health. Together, the structural determinants and conditions of daily life constitute the social determinants of health and are responsible for a major part of health inequities between and within countries. The poor health of the poor, the social gradient in health within countries, and the marked health inequities between countries are caused by the unequal distribution of power, income, goods and services, globally and nationally. So there's a bigger challenge behind the social inequity in relation to health. And in fact, the Commission does not really mince words. They say where systematic differences in health are judged to be avoidable by reasonable action, they are quite simply unfair. It is this that we label health inequity. Putting right these inequities, the huge and remedial differences in health between and within countries, is a matter of social justice. And we know that without social justice, there will not be social peace. Reducing health inequities is for the Commission on the Social Determinants of Health an ethical imperative. Social injustice is killing people on a grand scale. These are powerful words. Their overriding recommendations are 3. We've got to improve the conditions of daily life, the circumstances in which people are born, grow, live, work, and age. We've got to tackle the inequitable distribution of power, money, and resources. These are the structural drivers of those conditions of daily life, globally, nationally, and locally. And we've got to measure the problem, evaluate action, expand the knowledge base, develop a workforce that is trained in the social determinants of health, and raise public awareness about the social determinants of health. And the Commission says that we should set the goal of closing the health gap in a generation. That sounds a little idealistic to me. Nevertheless, it will take urgent and sustained action globally, nationally, and locally to do so. is the will there to attempt to do this? Having said something about the social determinants of health and the approach that WHO has been taking to try and get us to come to grips with this problem, I thought we could ask ourselves, what can we learn from the Caribbean experience in health? We know in the Caribbean that we have made significant achievements in health, and I'm not going to dwell here because we are familiar with these. But it is worth going back over 200 years to note, and these are data taken from the Worthy Park Estate in Jamaica, that of 355 births, a fifth were stillbirths, and over half died. 25% of all births died of neonatal tetanus just over 200 years ago. And a quarter of 181 slaves bought died in 1 year. That is where we're coming from, and we should not forget it. Nevertheless, if you look at the last 100 years, and what we are seeing here for Jamaica is reflected throughout the Caribbean for the most part, you can see that life expectancy nearly doubled from 38 to 72, and the infant mortality rate dropped significantly. This is what we've achieved over the past 100 years. But there's quite a bit of differential, because on one hand, notice Cuba is 78 and the USA is 77.7. Not much difference. And then you can see the variation. Bahamas, Jamaica, Trinidad, all about 70, and Haiti about 53. So there's some differentiation in relation to life expectancy at birth. And likewise, in relation to infant mortality, again, it's worth noting Cuba is just under 6. How can they achieve this, and they're such a poor country? And unfortunately, at the other end of the spectrum, you can see that Haiti still has a distance to travel, their infant mortality rate of 80. Now, if you just put the life expectancy alongside the infant mortality rate, and then look at the last column, US per capita income, you can see that the US per capita income is not a good predictor of the infant mortality rate or life expectancy. If you haven't been able to digest everything on this slide all in a glance, please take my word for it. And this slide, I apologize, is even a little more complicated, but let's look at the 2 columns for life expectancy. All this is saying is in these countries, the top 4 countries, Costa Rica through to Trinidad, that the percentage, the life expectancy is that percentage higher than expected based on the income of the country. Unfortunately, with Haiti, the minus is there because it was a bit lower than expected. And the infant mortality rate for those 4 countries again is lower. That's why the minus sign there is lower than expected relative to the income. And in Haiti, it was higher. So there's something going on in these countries which means that they seem to be doing better in relation to health than one would have predicted just on their income. But the overriding conclusion from these data is that income is clearly not the primary factor contributing to health outcomes. So we need to ask ourselves, what is? And a study that goes back to 1985 that was funded by the Rockefeller Foundation looked at good health at low cost, and it came up with 4 countries where they found that there was remarkably good health at low cost. And it's interesting to note that a number of other countries were considered, including Jamaica, China, and a couple others that were in the next bracket. They were not quite as good as these. But what were the factors contributing? High literacy. I keep telling my health colleagues that I would invest more in education than I would invest in health. And of course, perhaps we should invest more in our women than we should invest in our men, because that appears to make a big difference. Comprehensive health services, good access to primary health care, and strong political commitment. These are the factors that they found. Now, it's interesting, there was a study done by Evans and others that was published in the British Medical Journal in 2001, and they looked at health expenditure per capita in relation to life expectancy. And it was very interesting to see that Jamaica was in the top 10. But before we come to Jamaica, look at some of those other countries that we do not normally think of when we talk about health. France, Italy, Spain, Japan, right? There are aspects about their health systems that maybe we need to take into account. Now, Jamaica is here, but quite frankly, I think there are other Caribbean countries that potentially, could be there. Dominica is one that springs to mind. But if you look at the life expectancy against the GDP per capita, then you can see that there's quite a difference between the three top countries, China, Sri Lanka, and Jamaica, what those countries have been able to achieve compared to the more developed countries and the funds that they spend on health. Now, I'm coming back to the life expectancy and infant mortality that I showed you before for Jamaica, spanning the last 100 years. Because I want to just examine very quickly some of the factors that may have contributed to this improvement. Professor Riley from Indiana University actually came to Jamaica not too long ago and spent some time researching why it is that Jamaica was achieving good health at low cost. And for the period 1921 to 1943, just go back, 1921 to 1943, Jamaica got 16 years, 37 to 53, 16 years of increased life expectancy. This is before the era of antibiotics and technical things in health. Just, he feels, through to basic sanitation, water, latrines, education on basic hygiene, and effective public health leadership. This just illustrates the impact of the social determinants on health. Post-World War II, there were a number of public health campaigns. The UWI medical faculty was set up, schools of nursing, networks of health centers built, and the CARICOM health ministers, SPACGEM, 1964, Strategy and Plan of Action Against Gastro and Malnutrition, which was a tremendous problem among young children. The primary health care thrust in the 1970s, and this again at different times was represented throughout the Caribbean. And in Jamaica, the primary health care thrust actually predated the Alma Ata Declaration on primary health care. Public health programs throughout the Caribbean have had significant impact on health. So these programs have made a big, big difference, and it's throughout the Caribbean. So what are the strengths of the health system? There's a strong tradition of public health, comprehensive health system, the high quality of all the health professionals, and wide access to potable water and sanitary facilities, and the improved social conditions, the standard of living, literacy, educational level, and nutrition. These are the social determinants that have contributed. Everyone has access to health centers and emergency care on a walk-in basis. Fees are nominal or are waived, and both public and private doctors can refer patients to specialist clinics, so people can get ready access to specialists. Essentially is universal access to all levels of health care. But there are significant weaknesses, certainly in the Jamaican health system, and I would say to different extents throughout the Caribbean. The chronic shortage of key staff, weak management systems, underfunding, inadequate use of information technology, and inadequate physical conditions in terms of facilities. Now, look at the bottom of this graph. I've shown it for the third time, but this time I've added 2005. I only took you to 2000 before. Why is there a drop in life expectancy between 1990 and 2005? Right? You notice there is a fall. Is it the increased violence, the epidemic of violence that we've been having, certainly in Jamaica? And it's very troubling to see that this epidemic is representing itself throughout the Caribbean. Is it HIV/AIDS? Is it improved reporting? And I've put a question mark on another hot topic. There was a health reform movement. I cannot go into the details of this now, and this is a superficial addressing of this topic. But decentralization and fragmentation of health services weakened some of our central ministries, and user fees, which almost were inevitable given the underfunding from the central budget, resulted in reduced access to health care. And a number of administrators with limited or no understanding of health were put in charge of some health regions. I'm talking about Jamaica. Others can decide to what extent this may apply to other countries in the Caribbean. And really, this was a challenge. But it's interesting because there was a World Bank policy research paper that was published in 2004, and it attempted to evaluate health reform that took place in the 1990s on the essential public health functions. International experience is largely negative. This is their conclusion. Decentralization must not compromise the strength of central agencies responsible for essential public health functions. Competition among agencies responsible for public health functions does not improve efficiency. Privatization and market forces usually have a negative impact on health services. Don't tell the Republican Party that. And user fees are a barrier to access. Health is a technical ministry and needs to be led by technical persons or persons, managers with a technical understanding. So you need for postgraduate training at higher level for public health leaders, managers, and clinicians assuming senior administrative roles. And we have not approached this in a sufficiently systematic way. So that this is something that we need to look at carefully and address in the Caribbean. And we need to maintain the centrality of our people, patients, and health professionals. So we know the health challenges. I gave you the slide at the beginning. This is just a reminder. We have many health challenges. And these are the sort of health program type challenges. But you know, perhaps even more difficult are some of the other challenges, the increasing complexity of the health services, to get appropriate legislation and policy, all the competing interests. How do you manage the knowledge explosion, the information technology, the human resource issues and brain drain? all these issues we need to be able to manage in a systematic and efficient way. And I just want to hark back to the Ottawa Charter for Health Promotion of 1986. And you know, they talk about developing personal skills, strengthening community action, building healthy public policy, and creating supporting environments, etc. When you look at the Ottawa Charter carefully, it's interesting that the fundamental prerequisites for health outlined in the Ottawa Charter resonate with much of what the WHO Commission on the Social Determinants of Health has actually been stating. So the same themes are repeating themselves: the need for peace, shelter, education, food, income, social justice, and equity. These are very, very challenging and difficult issues, but they're recurring issues, and they must be addressed if we're really going to promote health. Moving towards wrapping up, I thought I would share with you over the past 10 years what's happening to our Human Development Index, which we know is a measure of literacy and educational attainment, life expectancy, and the income measured as in a certain way. It's interesting to know that Cuba has maintained 51 in the ranking, because this is relative to other countries. Bahamas seems to have nearly retained. But look at Barbados, which really, in a sense, is the flagship in many ways of the Caribbean. In terms of development, they have slipped from 25 to 37, Trinidad and Tobago from 38 to 64, and Jamaica from 86 to 100. What is happening to our countries? And maybe this is why Robin put in the title, are we moving forwards or backwards? We used to have a saying in Jamaica, you know, forward ever, backward never. I want to just round this off, stressing the importance for us to really build our health leadership capacity, because we face increasingly complicated and difficult challenges, and all of us have to be better prepared to address these working together in an interdisciplinary team. And these are some of the things that we need in terms of systematic training. And it's interesting to note that there are more training programs in the Caribbean now. Several universities throughout the Caribbean offer a master's in public health, and there's a PhD in public health, master's in epidemiology recently developed at Mona, and other programs. And there is now a doctorate in public health program, which is cross-campus, started at Mona. The entry criteria is the MPH, or equivalent master's. It's a 4-year part-time program, and it's a combination of 2 years of courses, face-to-face and distance, and 2 years field placement. And that is what I'm involved in now. So you can say, let me admit I'm advertising. In conclusion, if we're going to continue to improve health in the Caribbean, we've got to build on what we have in an innovative, creative way, working together with a focus on health outcomes. We've got to build our health leadership capacity, and we've got to address the social inequities and social injustice. Thank you.